better. Two dudes watch cartoons. Two dudes watch cartoons. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Welcome back to Two Dudes Watch Cartoons, the podcast where two dudes, that's us, watch cartoons. My name's Evan.
And my name is Alex, and today we are covering The Legend of Vox Machina. And in typical fashion for Evan and I, when we don't have all the facts, stats, what have you, we bring in an expert. So I'd like to welcome the third dude here today, Mr. Tommy Pizzulo. How are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm very excited to talk about this show in particular. And, I don't know if I'm a full expert, but I got my little professor hat on and I'm ready to teach some lessons about Critical Role, Vox Machina, and everything in between.
I do that. I throw the expert label around, and my cousin Brett did the same thing. He's like, I don't know if I'm an expert. But
you got to set it low. You got to set so then
Yeah.
so they're listening and they're like, oh man, he's an expert.
Yeah.
But if we
That's
set it
It's
at
relative.
top,
It's relative, for sure.
I should be like, this guy we picked up off the street. We don't know how much he knows. And then people will be really impressed with all the knowledge you have.
yeah, like fun fact, I just was on the streets, but I know so much about Vox Machina.
Exactly, yeah.
So we are talking about The Legend of Vox Machina, which Wikipedia describes as an American adult animated fantasy streaming television based off the very popular Critical Role podcast, which is a Dungeons and Dragons, a couple voice actors doing it live on the show. And that's about as much as I knew about the show going in. Do either of you two listen to Critical Role?
Yeah, what actually got this all started was Tommy in the middle of Critical Role's second season got me to listen. So I jumped right in, finished that, and they have just started season 3. I do follow along with it. It's one of my podcasts in rotation. I'm a little behind at the moment. Tommy's always giving me crap for that. But yeah, Tommy is a big into D&D, and he's the one who got me into Dungeons and Dragons to begin with, and the show, the podcast. So I'm glad he could be here with us, because anything I don't know, which is going to be a lot, he should have a better understanding of. Tommy, why don't you talk a little bit about your relationship with Critical Role, because I guess that's what brought us here today.
Yeah, I got into Critical Role later than I probably should have, because like everyone I knew was watching it, and I'm like, but it's like a 5-hour podcast, like that's a lot.
Yeah.
And so, but eventually I got back into it because like I got super into D&D, especially during quarantine. I got like deep, and I'm still real deep into it, guys. But Critical Role was one of those things that I just found that, it's a group, they call themselves, nerdy ass voice actors playing Dungeons and Dragons. Like that's what they are.
Mm-hmm.
And their storytelling is just so good. Matt Mercer, the DM, is just...
Matt's amazing. Matt is something else because he plays so many characters on the podcast. And I guess, let's start with the podcast a little, because it is so important to this story per se of the show itself. And so Critical Role, it's a weekly podcast where, like Tommy said, for about like 4 or 5 hours, they do a Dungeons and Dragons campaign, and it continues week after week. And it is so fun. They are so good. They're voice actors. So for being into animation, they all are really good character actors. And over a podcast, it's all voice acting. So it's really cool to see them. And they are just a total group of nerds. Sometimes even just like the inside jokes, they'll murmur to each other. I'm like, oh, I know that's from Community. Or, oh, I know that's from 30 Rock. Like, that's so funny. I'm glad I picked up on that. So I love listening to them. They're like a good group of friends, and they're just having a great time. So if you are into Dungeons and Dragons, if you're into this show, it's definitely a podcast worth checking out.
Yeah, and if you haven't heard of them, I'm surprised, because even if you're not into D&D, like they're big, like
They're massive.
Yeah,
They're huge.
Twitch, like it was released how like they're like the most profitable Twitch stream right now. Like it's ridiculous. Yeah.
So, Tommy, you have some experience, and you currently are running a campaign with a group, correct?
Yeah,
and you have to do that in about 2 hours. So we'll keep an eye on the clock. But how long have you been playing Dungeons and Dragons?
Yeah, so I've been playing since probably 2016. I'm on and off, right? Like I went in, I would play a couple of games, did a campaign, finished that, did a couple one shots, and then recently I got into a way bigger campaign where it's like 60 players with 9 DMs, and we kind of rotate.
Shit.
Yeah, it's called a Westmarch, so it's a whole different kind of entity. And then kind of run a couple other games on the side. I run a game with Alex, and then I play way too many games that I have a hard time saying no to. So I'm in a lot of games right now.
Yeah.
So I think what's interesting about this show, Vox Machina, to bring it back to the Dungeons and Dragons of it all, is this show was like crowdsourced. Like the podcast was just so popular that they were like, "Hey, we want to make a TV show," and fans were like, "Take my money, we want the TV show too." And that's like, to me, that has to be like the highest compliment as a creator, for fans to be like, let us fund your project we so desperately want to see. And I'm getting like goosebumps just talking about it. Like, that's so cool for them. And it's part of what I really enjoy about the show, is just kind of the how we got here of it all. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
And the story's wild. So like, to get into it a little bit, so like they're a podcast, and they were like, maybe we would like to get into a show maybe. And so they
Because
started
they're voice actors. That's what they do for their profession. Not to cut you off. Go on.
No, you're good. And they started pitching it, and either people were like, I don't know if this is going to work, or they said they just wanted to change a lot of it. They were like, no, we'd have to adapt it. So they were like, okay, whatever. So they went to Kickstarter, and this is the thing I like about Critical Role, is the people, they almost don't know how good they are, because they never think anything's gonna blow up. They never think it. Like one of their first couple of streams, they're like, oh, we're gonna make T-shirts. We'll just make 100. They literally sold out in like the first 5 minutes they announced it. Like, it was ridiculous. And so that's the same thing with this. They did the Kickstarter, and they're like, all right, we're gonna do 2 episodes just for you guys. Like, we're not gonna do a full series because it's us. Like, if we can get $1 million, we'll do 2 episodes. In an hour from the Kickstarter starting, they raised $1 million.
That's
and then
insane.
it kept going. I think it ended up being like 9 million maybe by the end. It was the most funded at the time, the most funded Kickstarter. It was around the time of like Veronica Mars movie, all that other bigger stuff. And yet Critical Role was just, people were like, please make this for us. And they ended up getting 12 episodes, and then picked up by Amazon, and then renewed, like right away. We're like, yeah, we also want another season 2. So like, they're already renewed for a second season.
They renewed for season 2 before it even aired. Like, that's not easy to do. And so just looking at like the numbers, the stats, all of that, like, this is definitely has a huge audience following, just alone from the people who like willed it into existence with their checkbooks. So to go big picture of it all, I really think it is a testament to like the times we are in, is where like even 10, 15 years ago, most Dungeons and Dragons players were very not open about playing Dungeons and Dragons. Like, nerd culture has taken over. We have a podcast where we solely talk about cartoons and people listen to it. 10 years ago, that wouldn't have worked. I think just as a whole, like, it's cool seeing these really fun, creative outlets, because Dungeons and Dragons is like, for those who don't know, it's like no other game you've ever played. And if you have any sort of love of like acting, improv, fantasy, just like cooperative games, it's something you should look into, because there's something for everyone there.
I think what Alex is trying to say is, if our listeners want to give us $1 million, we'll make a TV show of us watching cartoons.
Get out of here. Yeah, you said that, not me.
And you know what? Do it in less than an hour. Really give it the Critical Role.
Just stuff it in our pockets.
Come on, you cowards.
All right, this is the official announcement. We're starting now.
But so, I mean, we are talking about Critical Role a lot, but that, and this is...
They're so tied together.
They're very tied together, which I wasn't aware of at first. I knew... Going into it, I knew that it was, a lot of the people involved with the podcast were part of it, but I didn't know that it was directly based on their first campaign.
Yeah. So let's get into that. So this is interesting here. We have Evan's perspective, who has listened to 0 of Critical Role. We have my perspective, who's listened to new Critical Role. So I have not listened to anything that this TV show is about. And we have Tommy, who I think knows every in and out of season 1. So from my understanding, and I'm excited to hear if I'm correct, because this is just what I'm thinking, is this follows a part of their story in season 1 loosely. I think it hits a lot of the same plot points, but like Tommy said, it's a 4-hour improv campaign where there's a lot of like back and forth and other things that I'm sure it's not like a 1-for-1 remake of their podcast.
Mhm.
Yeah, a big thing they talked about, like one of the guys on the podcast, same Regal, but he also was like him and Travis Willingham. Both,
My fave.
yeah, Sam's great, and both of them were heavily involved in the animation process. They directed and wrote a lot of these episodes, and they talked about it as like, we already have the podcast. That's already a thing. If you want to go out there and watch that stuff, it's there. So like they really did want to separate it as much as they can, but it's also like the story's great, and so yeah, this is based on. The first 2 episodes are based on pre-stream stuff because they were playing for a year before they ever went to Geek and Sundry. So they were playing for a whole year, and then the first 2 episodes are based on a couple things there, and then the rest of it is all the Briarwoods arc. So that's like the second arc in the campaign, and it's a big one. Like it's the first one where people are like, "Oh shoot, this is." D&D can get real. Like it's emotional. People, they cry on stream. Like things happen that get really intense. And this was the first arc where it's like, oh no.
Love that. So Evan, I feel like I didn't have any backstory on these characters. I didn't know who they were. I had never heard of them. Did you feel confused, like you had been missing something?
A little bit. Not knowing that it was based on a campaign, I thought it was just going to be like an episodic monster hunting, monster of the week type of thing, which I would have been down for. And I'm not complaining about what it is, but it's like I didn't know what I had signed up for, if that makes any sense. It's like, oh, I got to know this. Or who's it? Percy becomes essentially the main character of the season. I was like,
a bit of a twist.
Yeah. Episode 1, I was like, I thought he would have been like a B character, you know? So there were just certain things. It's like, looking back at it now, it's like, oh, I can see how this is based on a D&D improv, slightly made up campaign, because like the pacing kind of shifts, and just from the beginning, it's like you got to keep
I'll
up.
just say it. I feel like you're dancing around it. The first 2 episodes were not great. And it gives you like a really almost bad impression of what you think the show's going to be. But then episode 3 and on, phenomenal. I don't know if that's exactly what you're getting at, Evan, but I agree with you. Based on the first 2 episodes, I thought it was going to go into episode arcs of a story every time. And so it really caught me off guard when I was like, oh no, we have like a much bigger story going on here. And not to say because I enjoyed it. I liked that it did that. But the first 2 episodes, it throws you off a little. And I even think Tommy told me, he's like, you kind of got to make it through the first 2 episodes, and then it really picks up. And I was like, oh, okay, interesting. And I can really see why now. And I'm wondering, and I have not gone back and rewatched it, but I'm wondering if the first 2 episodes are really to try and set up the characters, because there's a lot of characters. And that was one thing I was worried I was going to not like, I guess. But it didn't bother me at all. I feel like I had a very good sense of who everyone was, even if I didn't always remember their name properly. I always knew who was doing what and kind of what their motivation was.
Yeah. I agree that the first 2 feel almost like a completely different adventure. And but I will say, I think if you don't have those first 2, you would feel jarring. Like you're just getting thrown into this campaign, right? And it's like you almost need the first 2 to get used to the group, see that they're like kind of misfits that are really good, but like they're misfits that just band together and like, you know, do a lot of stupid things, but then also succeed, you know, kill the dragon. Yeah.
Classic D&D group. They make a ton of mistakes. They banter off each other. They don't always agree. So I do love that aspect of it.
The way I had described it to Alex is like, and part of it is because during the first 2 episodes, I did doze off at a certain
And this
point,
is not a show you can like look at your phone, doze off a little.
You know, I start episode 1, it's the adult animated fantasy. They're cracking a bunch of jokes. That stuff didn't always land with me. And that's probably the part of the show that I didn't prefer. But then I would like doze off, wake up, and it's like action fantasy. It gets pretty serious into lore. And like
I told Evan he had to go back. I was like, you missed something big.
I'm definitely missing something. I like woke up to a different show. I was like, I really like this show.
I will say it was episode 3. Maybe 4. I think it's episode 3 when they are fighting the Briarwoods, where I was like, holy shit, this is awesome. And it may have been my cousin Brett, good cousin Brett, he goes, oh yeah, it's D&D anime. And for some reason, I had not attached the anime connotation to it yet. I was more like Evan, just considering it like adult animation. And when I started looking at it a little more like an anime, I was like, oh yeah, this shit slaps. This is really good.
Yeah, the lore stuff is great, and like even in the first 2 episodes, there's like moments where you get it like right, like the town getting destroyed and the kid, like all that stuff is so deep and so like
That was great.
yeah. But then I think the other thing, and like what you're saying, Evan, like I have heard from a lot, some of the raunchiness gets a lot, especially from Scanlan. Like, and it's weird because in the podcast, I think it's because it's 5 hours. He does that same stuff, but it's like it's spread throughout as opposed.
Yeah,
diluted.
it's not as concentrated in a 30-minute episode where he's talking about butt plugs and although I will say when it's the same fight where they're like out having the fight of their lives and he is inside like gyrating with cake flying all over the audience. I like laughed out loud when that happened. I was like, that was hilarious. So I agree. While not all of the raunchiness landed for me, there were times where I was like, oh, that was pretty fucking funny.
Yeah, and I think you need it for like, I don't want to give too much, but where Scanlan goes, I think you need this setup for that character of like, this is where he is at this point, and like everything, there's so much set up. Even like the first 2 episodes we talk about, but like that's setting you up for the end stuff. Like that's it's all there.
It's all there. While we are moving on from the first 2 episodes, I did want to shout out David Tennant, who plays the villain in the first 2 episodes. I love David Tennant. I'm a big David Tennant fan. So when I realized that was him, I was like, oh my God, I love David Tennant.
Well, in general, it's like we talk about the voice actors of like the actual cast, right? Which like not to downplay, like they're not just voice actors; they're like some of the biggest voice actors. Like Ashley Johnson, I like didn't realize till recently, like voiced Gretchen from Recess. I knew all the other
Infinity Train.
Yeah, did Infinity
Train. She's and she was one of the best voice actors, and I was like, oh, it shows that she's done a lot of voice acting.
Last of Us is the other one she played. Yeah,
I always recognize her from. She's the girl who gets rescued by Cap in the first Avengers.
She is! Oh my God, I can't believe you recognized her from that. I have to like IMDb it. And I think I was literally just talking about this with Tommy last week. That's such an out of place scene in that movie. She 100% was supposed to have some sort of big part because they show her like 3-4 times.
It's a classic Joss Whedon move.
It's a total Joss Whedon move.
He does it in Justice League with the Russian family. It's like,
stop it. Oh my God, you're so right. Okay.
But
this is not about Avengers. It's about Ashley Johnson. She is great. Her character in this, Pike, like I said, I didn't know anything about her, but Pike goes on a little bit of her own journey and there's like a lot of self-reflection. And I was like, oh, they picked the perfect one because she really nailed those parts. Like you can hear her acting in her voice.
Yeah, and it shows also where, you talk about David Tennant. They got all these voice actors because they're in the industry. Like David Tennant, you get a Hobbit. They had an actual Hobbit. Like they had, you have Grey. Azula herself playing Delilah. Like that was
another one.
That was perfect.
And she was perfectly cast.
Yeah.
There were times where I was like, oh, it sounds like Azula, but then there was other times where I was like, oh, this is perfect.
Yeah.
Should we go episode by episode or go through characters?
You know what? Let's go through the characters because there's a lot of them, and I think if we go episode by episode, we may leave some things out. Weirdly enough, like I said, it's weird because you don't consider this person the main character when the show starts, which I kind of like. That's like a D&D thing. Is there's not a main character in D&D. It spotlights different people at different times. And this show did a good job of doing that. While Percy was definitely the main character for season 1, we got bits of everyone else in their story. It did not really... It felt true to D&D, I think is the best way to put it. But so our main character, I would say, is Percy DeRollo. If we're going full D&D, I believe he's an artificer. Is that his class, Tommy?
No, so
Shit.
So you're not... This is a very unique class that they made specifically for this because they were originally playing on Pathfinder, which is a whole different game. But they found that 5e, what they're playing on, was a better streaming version. So they adapted it, and he plays a gunslinger. So that is a custom class from Pathfinder that they've adapted into.
Never even heard of that.
Yeah.
Okay, I was so confident he was an artificer. God damn it!
You're like that's basically essentially like very similar. So you're not like off on a wrong direction. They're very similar.
Whatever he is class-wise, Percy's cool as shit.
Yeah.
I love... this is such a weird thing that I noticed while watching this. I love a cool main character. I know that's such a basic thing to say, but there are main characters that are goofy or like lighthearted, and those are fine. I don't not enjoy those. But while watching this, I was like, God damn, Percy's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's like if we followed Sasuke instead of
Yes!
Naruto.
Yeah,
We get a Seto Kaiba instead of Yugi.
you're so right. Yeah, it's the cooler one. It's following the
Yes.
instead of Yugi's stupid kid ass. Oh my god.
Yeah, Percy's interesting, and like what you're saying of like he comes into the spotlight here, even in the campaign. Like they're obviously they played a lot, but he was kind of more of a secondary character. He was more of a support guy. Would come in. He was brought into the campaign mostly because he played D&D before, and not all of them did. So he was kind of like there to like help people. And then then this arc came because like what kind of how D&D works is like it's a combination of you write your own backstory, but then like the DM will do stuff. So like I think Percy only gave Matt like six names, told him like the whole backstory, but like Matt made it what it was. Like Matt made this like entire arc himself.
And that's what I was saying is Matt is like, while the others are great in the show, Matt is really the heart and soul of Critical Role. He does so much
Is
for it.
he the
story-wise.
DM? Can I ask?
Yes.
Okay.
I guess we should. Yeah, he's the DM.
Right.
So he plays basically any
Other
character that's not them.
Yeah.
And he's the one creating most of the story. And man, his stories, the dude could be a full-time writer, in my opinion. He is so intricate with his stories. And so the thing with Percy, let's just go character by character. So Percy has a revolver and it's got 6 names on it. How cool is that? And he's like, I am going to use this for vengeance on these 6 names.
My favorite line of the whole season is they're asking him he's talking about the names, explaining it. And they go, who's the 6th barrel for? And they don't answer it. They just cut it
move
down.
on.
Oh,
Well,
he's going to fucking shoot himself.
That's what I thought. Oh my God. I was so positive. It was after the 5 names. He had to shoot himself.
So that's what everyone thought as well in like the campaign, right? And if you actually watch that scene again, if you look at the background, his shadow has the angle, the shadow shows the gun pointing to his head.
That's cool.
And like but like the real fact is like they've talked about it after, and both Matt and Percy, or both Matt and Towson, who plays Percy, came up with the same idea, which was after you did the 5 names, it would just recycle. There'd be new names. It never ends. So
it's a never-ending cycle of vengeance. I think that was so. What's cool about Percy also is he's like the gunslinger. I called him an artificer. So he deals with like technology and like more like advanced stuff than your D&D. Like he's not dealing with like nature magic or stuff of that. And like he's the one that's like possessed by like a demonic soul. Like he's the one with the supernatural curse. I thought that was really cool because to me, I thought he was just going to be like I come from the advanced civilization and I shoot guns and I have this tech that you guys don't have. You don't know about gunpowder? I thought that was going to be his character. Like he was going to be like the snooty rich outcast. He was like, oh, I can't believe we're staying in these. And he just turned out to be none of that. And I loved it.
That was one of the things. It sneaks up on you if you don't have the background of Critical Role. It's like, oh, he's got a tragic origin story. Oh, he's talking about his parents again. Oh, this is the central plot line. Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
It takes literally a whole episode of focusing on him for you to be like, oh, wait, this is going to be about him.
Yeah, and they do a good job of like slow burning it, but also like kind of hand in hand. I'm going to keep talking about it, is like the animation also just like helps so much. There's so much stuff, like you said, you can't be on your phone because a lot of it's show not tell, and like every time he puts his mask on, you never actually see him put his mask on, right? They always, if you watch, they'll have like
good detail.
They'll have like a person in front of him, and then he'll walk behind him, and then the mask will be on. And it's so good, and it's like Percy is such a complicated character. I think he's a little more evil than they give him credit. Like he's technically chaotic neutral, I think, or something. I'm like, no, he's like he's like way more evil, like especially with this like demon, and like that. It's such a big character, and like in the campaign, like no one knew this stuff, right? So they're just like figuring it out as they go. And like the big moment where like the gun goes in the acid, right? That was completely, so a lot of this is from the campaign. And like that was just Sam thinking maybe it's like Sam just did that at Scanlan and just threw it in, and like it ended up being the demon stuff, and like no one knew. It was just a complete,
Like
guess.
I think Scanlan did it as like a joke. And they were like, oh no, my gun. And then Matt was like, oh, and a little bit of demon, you see, evaporates in the acid or whatever. And you're like, oh no, there was more in it still.
I definitely, that was one of the moments I missed when I dozed off. I think they're in the jail, and then I like woke up to him, and he's got the mask on and the smoke around him. And I swear to God, he said, "I'm vengeance." I was like, I know I've been watching a lot of Batman shit. Like, did I hear that correctly?
Yeah. And he's the character where a lot of those lines are straight from Tolson from when he improvised it. Like a lot of that, the your soul is what's the line? It's like
Forfeit.
Your
Your soul is forfeit. I was like, whoa.
yeah, that's like straight from him. And like and then we haven't even tried to attempt it. The whole joke with his name, right? Like he has such a long name and he finally says it and takes the throne, but it's always this joke in the campaign of like, he has the longest name of all time. It's like what? Percival Fredrickson von Musel Klowowski de Rolo III.
Yeah, I was like, holy, yes, that's funny to me. While we're on like jokes, I got to imagine this is one Evan didn't pick up on, but Tommy kind of pointed it out to me because I was like, what is going on with? They always have trouble opening doors. Anytime there's a door, they have trouble, and that's like such a D&D thing. Is they're like, okay, I'm gonna roll to unlock the door, and they like can't. Yeah,
What is that? What is that skill? Dexterity or what would it be?
It would be sleight of hand check because you're going to try to, or you can try to knock it down. There's many ways to handle a door, but they definitely always struggle with it. They usually
and they show it in the show. They always are struggling with a door, which I thought was really funny because when I first started playing D&D, I was like looking it up, and one of the memes was like, one time my campaign spent 2 hours trying to open a door, and then we realized it was unlocked. I was like, oh my God, that's so funny because they just like assumed it was locked and they just started going to town, and then someone was like, have we even tried just opening it?
Yeah, no, and that's a big thing in D&D, and like this group definitely and it's like he keep at a certain point it's like, man, maybe you should get really good at this. They never do. They never get better at opening doors. But yeah, Percy is an interesting character, and I think they do a really good job with his backstory. They even like being able to see these flashbacks and being able to see all this stuff. It's so cool seeing like his family, and then like you don't get that, right? It's just voice. It's just Matt telling you the story, but now you get to physically see this stuff, and it gives a whole different layer to him. And he's I think they did a really good job of setting him up in this. Obviously I think and he's going to go more in the shadows in the future seasons, but they've established
spoilers.
Well, no, I'm saying in general.
It's a rotating cast of main characters.
He'll still have his moments. He's still got
moments.
some spice.
Okay. So I'm sure we'll talk more about Percy as we go on because he's his story's caked into the whole plot. Let's move on to a new character. Tommy, which character do you want to go to from here? This is kind of fun. Let's like popcorn around.
Yeah. Let's go to who some may consider the leader of the group, even though they don't have a leader. But I think Vex makes a lot of decisions. Let's talk about Vexalia.
Okay, can we? But while we're just on the topic, there is Vex, there is Vax, and then there is Vox. What is going on with that? I get the two are twins, so that makes sense. What is their name directly related to the names group? The name of the group? Did I miss them naming the group something off of Vex and Vax? Why is it Vex, Vax, and Vox? It drove me nuts. Sorry.
Well, Vox Machina is like obviously a play on the word on the phrase. I'm gonna forget it right now, but
Deus Ex Machina.
Yeah. But it is confusing, and I love that the show even is like they have the whole song where they're like, "Hey, just so you know, this is Vex. This is Vex." The way I remember it, it's like Vex is a female, and that starts with that has an E. And then Vax is a male with an A. So that's how I try to remember. But it is very hard sometimes.
That's okay. I had to get that gripe out. And so I don't even know. Are we talking about Vax or Vex? Who did we start?
Let's talk about Vex first.
Vex, the sister.
Vex. Well, either way, I love both these two. I love the sibling dynamic where they are just making comments to each other the whole time. They're like, yo, let's dip out of here at the first sign of trouble. Like, that's so funny to me because I really think that would be me and Brendan if we're like with a group of like semi-strangers. I'd be like, yo, first sign of trouble, we are leaving these idiots. So that was really funny to me that they did that basically throughout the whole thing.
Yeah, and there are times where like, we're talking about Vex, but it's hard to not talk about both. Vex would just like leave, and like Vex would just be like, all right, I go off, and they would got to a point where the parties, you can't just like leave and do stuff. Like he would just, because he's a rogue, he would just go off and be like, all right, I go and spy on these people, or like you see him like in the Briarwoods thing, like he sneaks into their room and
he took off, and then
yeah, and the other big thing, with Vex, it's like, when I say she's the leader, she definitely is the planner. You even see it with like Scanlan tries to say stuff, but it's like it's always Vex's plan. It's always she's worried about the group, and she's kind of the mom. Well, she's a mom in certain ways. Pike is a mom in different ways, but
She's the big sis.
Yes,
That's a good way of looking at it.
and with her, like, we can also talk about her and Pike, but like the magic in this, I really love how they did her. She has an ability as a ranger, so she's a ranger.
Okay, I got her class right.
Yeah.
I'm gonna keep quizzing myself. I'm so
Rangers
mad about the
are
artificer, the Legolas of
long
the group.
range, the Legolas of the
Yes.
group. Okay, yeah.
She has an ability where she can like sense a creature that I've chosen. So she chose dragons because of a backstory thing with her. And so I love how the show showed it as almost like a spidey sense. Like it was like, oh,
That's what I was gonna
the-
call it. It seemed
Yeah.
like a Spidey, a Peter tingle to me.
Yeah, and they do a really good job of like,
Evan's so mad I just made that joke. For those who can't see, he is so mad that I just said the
Please
word
never
Peter
say
tingle.
Peter Tingle again.
He's livid. You
That-
can't see it on his face. He's so mad I said that.
Vex's
All right.
tingle.
A Vex tingle.
Tingle. But yeah,
No,
mean,
I did like they showed it that way though, because
Yeah.
I without that like actual descriptor of it, I wouldn't have known what was going on. But I was like, oh, she can sense when a dragon's nearby.
Mhm.
Yeah, and it would have been easy for them to be like, magic is magic, like kind of like Lord of the Rings. Sometimes it's like it's just magic, and like they specifically show each character has very unique styles, right? Scanlan's is more purple. You got Pike's is very radiant, damage, radiant energy, and then you got Vex with this kind of stuff. And it's just I love that you can see the spells, you can see the D&D spells like silence. You know what silence is. You
Yeah.
see it. You can see detect magic when Pike uses it. It's so good.
Mhm.
It is because there's so many spells in D&D, and they could fall into like almost a Lord of the Rings where it just kind of is, and they do a good job of distinguishing what's what magic. I hadn't thought of that, but it's a really good point.
One thing I did appreciate about the series as a whole is I think in one of the first episodes they like go to a shop and have to restock on arrows and stuff. I've played one D&D campaign in my life. We didn't finish it, but like that stuff is I think what makes this show so great is just like ideally people who play D&D, this is what you're picturing or this is what you want to picture in your head as you're like scribbling little math and rolling dice on a sheet of paper. It's like this is that fantasy realized to an extent. That being said, I kind of feel like Vex maybe got a little short served on the like character development or like plot wise. I felt like she took a little bit of a back seat.
I'll be honest, I was confused she had a bear. About halfway through, I was like, "Oh my god, wait, is that Vex's bear?" I was like, "Is that Vex's
I forgot
bear?"
about the
it's-
bear. Yeah.
See, so I think Evan has a good point here, where I know more about Vex than I do Vex from watching it, because Vex had the love story.
Yeah.
But we can get into that. I always think it's interesting when siblings are not jealous, because now that makes it sound weird, but like like weary of like
Yeah.
they're like, don't get involved, like
Protective.
yeah, because
Yes.
it is like so realistic, but it comes off as like, you know, Vex is like, leave me the fuck alone, I'll do what I want.
Yeah, and I think there is a little bit of jealousy. Like it's always been the two of them, and now it's like Vax has someone else.
It
and
can
I
be
think-
non-weird jealousy. You're
Yeah,
right.
non-weird
Yeah.
jealousy, because it's
Yeah.
like it's more the idea that you always have your buddy, and now you don't have your buddy as much, and like that.
She's like, oh, Vax would dip with her instead.
Yeah,
Oh, no, hey, you're making a joke, but that's a good point.
Yeah.
yeah.
He'd
But
run
Vex-
off into the sunset with her instead of me now. Oh my
Yeah.
god, no, wait, actually, that's a good point.
Here's a question. I very easily could have missed this because we all know I'm terrible at catching details. But
Stop
did
telling people
Vex-
you fall asleep while watching these shows, please. Go
He's
on.
he's a man of the people. He tells them he's honest.
I'm honest. I tell it like it is.
Stop.
Vox Machina is a very good show. Did Vex and Percy have a little thing, or did I misread or make that? I don't know.
No. Oh,
At all?
they had like
Tensions. I don't know.
chemistry. Like
Okay,
she.
but there was nothing explicit.
no. I don't think there was like a smooch, a blush,
Sure.
unrequited. But like, I get what you're saying. Where I was like, are these two going to end up together? Because I think they share what it is. I think they both share the responsibility of trying to control the group a little.
Wrangle the group. Yeah.
Wrangle the group. And she, throughout the series, is like, Percy, you're like losing it, and I kind of need you. We're like 1 and 2 here, and you're going off on this whole thing. And so I did get a sense of like, ooh, are these two secret lovers? But
Does
no, that
she
never
make his
came up.
Peter tingle? I'm sorry, this is the quiet episode. I'm sorry.
I think the thing with Vex, and I hear you about the character development and everything, because it's like, I think a lot of her character development is coming from, she doesn't have her own thing. It's always like her and Percy, her and Vax, her and, it's always somewhat like her and Keyleth and all that, like their relationship. And so it's like, yeah, I mean, I think with the Percy stuff, they definitely are bonded in the sense that I feel like they both see things very similarly. And especially, I think they also have some tragedy that is very similar in that sense. And I think there's like,
sense.
I think that she can understand him better than almost anyone else in the group.
Gotcha.
I agree.
But
I
it makes
like
me
that.
appreciate her character more. For sure.
Yeah, she's definitely a support system for a lot of them. But yeah,
This is what's great about a D&D group is in a TV show, it literally would just be the twins. Like that would be their only relationship, but that's not realistic to how D&D is they all have relationships with each other, some stronger than others. So I really appreciate that look at it. And so what I've come to realize is like with D&D, there's so much opportunity for such dynamic storytelling, and it happens just so naturally. And I think that's what's really cool is like this was unfolded kind of naturally as they were playing, and they were like, it was like gold mining. You know what I mean? They did like a long session to get like all the really good stuff. So I appreciate that about that. I think just a natural, I liked my popcorn style, but a natural transition from Vex is to talk about her brother Vax.
yeah, I did want to mention Trinket of like, Trinket's great. It's hard, you know,
the bear.
it's hard with the bear.
I was gonna say who's
Trinket the bear. I love the guards. I just
Do
want to mention
Rangers, what is this relationship they have? Explain it to me like I'm know nothing about D&D.
Yeah, so like Rangers get a companion at a certain point. If you're a certain type of, there's subclasses, there's all this stuff, but they get like a little buddy. And this is basically, I think the story, she's told it before, and it was like, I think the mama bear got killed and basically Trinket was there. And so she picked up the Trinket and they became buds for life, you know? Yeah, Trinket is definitely a fan favorite. It's hard in the show. And like one of the things, honestly, it's hard in the campaign is like, what do you do with Trinket? Like if there's stairs, what do you do? Like there's multiple times where it's like, how do we get Trinket places? So they'll like leave Trinket somewhere and then be like, we have to go back and get Trinket. So eventually she does get an item. She gets like a Pokeball almost. It's like a little Pokeball necklace that she keeps Trinket in. And then it's like, but yeah, that's
Trinket
why
for Trinket. I love
yeah.
that.
I went from knowing nothing about this bear to it being my new favorite character. What the fuck?
There's Funko Pops of Trinket. Trinket's a big deal.
I love that.
So we are going to transition to Vax,
Yes.
her twin brother, who's also a rogue half elf.
I love rogues. Vax did 2 things, and it may have been in episode 3, episode 4. It was earlyish where I was just like mind blown seeing these D&D spells come to life. One, he took off his belt and it turned into a snake, and I gasped. I gasped like I'd never seen magic in my life. I'm going to be honest. I was like, that was so cool and smooth and awesome. And then the other one is he threw his dagger and then it shined yellow, disappeared, and was back in his goddamn hand.
What is that spell? I love that.
I think
animation.
it's Blink.
Blink. Okay.
No.
Yeah. So no. Yeah. It's like in the dagger. So the dagger is a blink dagger. So yeah, the idea is it's almost like Thor's hammer. You throw it and it can come back to you. You throw it.
That
and
was
it come
so
back.
cool because
Yeah.
it caught me off guard, and I was just like, yes. I was like, that was awesome.
And the snake's name is Simon. The snake belt's great, and like definitely like I love that they had that in there. Like the little eye patch. Oh, it was so good.
He was great, and he really to me embodied what I like to see in a rogue.
He's an angst. Listen, Liam.
He's angsty.
Liam is I've never seen Liam do a character that's not angsty and a little sad boy. Like that's definitely his type. And
It's funny because I'm listening right now. Yeah, that's
But Vax is great, and like Vax is like I would say the other leader, if not like the main leader. Like people go to Vax when they need like an inspirational speech. People go to Vax when it's like dire needs. Vax is the person you can count on. And I will say with the show, I didn't love how much they focused on the relationship side of. I get the purpose of it, and I get why, because it's like in
it's
the
such
show.
a TV hook. People
know.
love a romance, even though
People love to ship things.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Well, okay. Here's my question for you then: is it better to not in your show not have any of the characters be like romantically involved and just let the audience like go crazy with with what they think, or is it better to be like, no, audience, these two are going to be together?
I would say leave it open to the audience's imagination.
Speculation. That's what I imagine. You got to let them wonder.
Yeah, and this is one where it's like the show, it was way more in the podcast, right? Like it was like 40 episodes. They built this like small flirtingness, and it was mostly from Vax's side, and like they didn't talk about this. No one knew that Liam was like, Vax is starting to fall for Keyleth. He got so into the character. He's like, I know my character is falling for Keyleth, and he would do things like, I stand in front of Keyleth. He would do a lot of small cues to like hint to the relationship, and then that like big scene where he's like, I love you, is like from the campaign. It's a little different. They do it at a different point, but like he's like, yeah, I love you, and then he kisses her in the campaign. I think they got rid of it because it was a little too like, you didn't like, it was like very like I'm just gonna kiss you, and it was like a little like
consent is sexy.
Yes, exactly. And I think like Marisha, who plays Keyleth, was definitely caught off guard, and they talked about it more. Like it is what it is. It is. I don't want to ruin where it goes, but
this is D&D, baby. It's real life.
So Tommy, can I ask, when you say 40 episodes,
that's 44 hours.
Okay. So each episode is about an hour. Someone had said.
Oh no, each episode's
like episode's about 4. Oh, so my math's totally wrong.
Yeah.
It's way more than that.
Get out of here! A 4-hour podcast.
I don't know where I got 44 from. Do not listen to me.
And when I say 40
they're
episodes,
4 hours.
And it's 40 episodes up to this point. I think the campaign one was probably 180. It was like a ridiculous amount of 120 maybe episodes.
I've never listened to a full campaign, Evan. I joined towards the end of season 2, not knowing it was almost the end of season 2. But I just picked up, and it's not impossible to just jump in and join, but it's much more like, it's way more earned when you get there, because like in season 3, I'm only 12, 13, 14 episodes in. It's fun. If you're into it and you have the time, it's definitely a lot of fun.
Yeah, because they build these relationships.
It's a slow burn.
Yeah. It's like when people ask me if I'm going to read the book that a movie is based off of. Like,
no.
I'll just catch the 90-minute version.
Yeah. And you know what Tommy brought up, and not saying, because the podcast is really good, but there are like recaps on YouTube that like break it up and it shows them. But it is really good. And that's actually a great comparison, though, is the podcast is the book this is based on. I think that's actually a really apt comparison. And I hope moving forward, just in this age of new media, we see more things like this. Like, I'm really into this.
Yeah.
Like a Two Dudes Amazon Prime.
I am not. I swear I'm not pitching that. You keep thinking I am. Okay. Let's see. Any more thoughts on Vax and how just awesome he is? What do we really jumped off the rails there?
So Vax is a character who, if I had to, pick from the lineup, just looking at the Legend of Vox Machina cover image, not knowing anything about the podcast or the show, I was like, that's clearly the main character. The cool guy with the pointy ears
that's a
and
good
the
point.
knives. Like that's the main character.
Yeah.
So
you're like, his sister's here, his love interest is here. You're like, he's the main character.
He's the man. So I don't. He definitely had a little more, to do plot wise and relationship wise in the season, but I was rooting for him as opposed. I was like, I don't care about Percy's parents.
Oh no. Yeah, Vax is great, and like all the stuff at the end where he's getting mind controlled and fighting his sister. She was gonna kill him. Like that's the thing. She was gonna kill him, and that's intense. I also love, like, I think Vax did a good representation of this. The show in general is very progressive and very like he is a fluid character. You see him flirting with Gilmore, and you see him flirting with Keyleth. Like that is. It is. I love that the show does stuff like that, and like it's a lot in the campaign we're watching. There's a lot of they them. There's a lot of like fluidity there too, and it's just I kudos to the show for like not being taboo about that stuff.
Yeah, not
also that's realistic in a fantasy world, more so than our own goddamn stupid world.
Yeah,
like, there are creatures that don't have gender or you know what I mean. So yeah. I agree though. I liked that look at him too, and it wasn't like a focus or a plot point. It just was, and I enjoyed that.
Fact of life.
Yeah. I always enjoy that in a character when it's not like a story of them having to be like, oh yeah, well I like guys and girls and everyone. Like no, it just was.
I think we're just ditching the popcorn concept by now.
It felt
but
great at the beginning.
It felt
Sorry.
good.
Yeah,
and
let's go to
it's all right.
Caliph, though.
Yeah.
I know where we're going from here.
So, Tommy, explain to me. Keyleth is the Keyleth is
Keyleth.
this
I said it
Yeah.
wrong.
nature mage. What is this class? Is it cleric? I don't know anything. I'm just guessing.
Yeah, woo, I like that. That was my guess too. Tommy, official answer. What is Keyleth?
She's a druid.
Oh, what
A
the?
druid.
Yeah, she's nature.
Okay, wait. So I thought Pike and her. So Pike is a
Pike is a
cleric.
cleric,
I thought they were
Yes.
both clerics because they were both
Gotcha.
kind of healing. Okay.
No, they can do here. Like that's the thing. A lot of these classes have healing, right? Like druids can heal. They're very naturey. She has like wild shape. You see, like she can turn into animals and stuff. She is very. So the person that plays Marisha, she was super big into and still is super big into Avatar. So Keela is definitely a lot of her backstory. You'll find out more later. Is like very Avatar. She has to finish these trials of nature. You know, the fire trial, the water trial, the air trial. That's like a big thing of her
Hell yeah.
character. Yeah, and
Love
her
that.
confidence is a big thing. And another thing we like with her character is like I love that they showed her nervousness and her like unconfidence. And by the end, you see that she becomes the light, as they say. Like she's another character where like she has a cool arc. Some people didn't love it in the podcast. There's mean people out on the internet, and they were mean to Marisha and they were mean to Keela.
What? People
They
are
didn't-
mean on the internet?
Yeah, surprising.
Oh, God. Oh, wow. Okay. Got to watch out for that.
Yeah, but yeah, it's like I like that they didn't like shy away from it because they obviously got that backlash with the podcast. But they're like, no, even with this anime show, that's
It's her
Keela.
character.
Yeah.
I
Mhm.
like that. I really like Keyleth, and maybe it was as it went on, I appreciated her more and more because I liked that she was nervous, she was timid, she didn't think she could do it, and once Pike had to go on Pike's solo journey, she was like, I got to step up. I got to do this for the team, and I like that she did. I love a good story of someone finding their confidence, finding
Yeah.
their light, if you will.
And this
Mhm.
like all of her stuff with the sun tree, really moving, like and her trying to bring it back. But then
Well, so I want to talk about the Sun Tree because I think this moment was really lost on me until I went and watched a YouTube side by side of what
Uh-huh.
happened in the podcast versus this. It's a really good moment, and I'm upset that it didn't land the way it was supposed to for me when it was because I really like the moment. And that's kind of why I want to talk about it. So when I was watching it live, and I just, was falling from Evan syndrome, falling in and out of attention, when that moment happened, I thought it was like actually them. And I thought we were doing some either time travel or like body snatchers. I was like, oh my God. I was like, this is crazy. What kind of magic has cloned them and killed them already? Or like, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
Or I was like, have they been here already? And so I really got a misdirect on that one. So it's a really cool moment. And if anyone misunderstood it like me, what it is they are bodies that look like them and were dressed up like them as like a warning of, hey, if you come around here, we're going to kill you. And it's much more menacing and badass. And I think by the look on Evan's face right now, he was a little lost like me. Is that correct?
Yeah, definitely.
It's a great moment, and I really like. I want to watch it again because I just watched this YouTube comparison this morning. But that was maybe one of the things that I wish was a little more impactful.
yeah, it's a big. I mean, it is the moment in the campaign where they're like,
Mhm.
oh, Matt's not messing around. Like Matt will do intense things, and we need to be because they weren't. So like in the podcast, they weren't really even paying attention. They were like,
Yes,
sometimes Matt
it's
goes and
great.
they're like doing things and what's
They're
funny is
taking notes, or
Yeah.
and he starts describing the bodies they see. And go on, Tommy,
Uh-huh.
you were describing it. It's really good.
yeah, and it is like just in the show, it's Keyleth, it's Marisha that figures it out, and she's like, it's us. It's such a good moment because it's like it finally hits them, and they're like, wait, that's us up there. Like it's not, but it's they were, and like
Mhm.
I did like that the show again because you have a show you can jump to moments, and I like that you can jump away from Vox Machina sometimes, and I love when the Briarwoods invite the townspeople. The townspeople that end up being hanged, they're like, "Hey, you've won a prize. You get to come to dinner." And the little girl's like,
Mhm.
the little girl was so sad, and it's like you're representing Pike. It was like, like, are we won a prize? It's like, yeah, and she was so happy. And then we see her later. It's
And the
such a good
prize is
setup.
you're getting hanged.
It worked for me, but I also knew it was coming because, like, I'd have like, oh man, we got to get the Sun Tree moment. Like, if we don't do this
Yeah.
in the show, like,
it was a great moment. I just misunderstood it when it happened, and upon re-examining it, it's still like, oh, it's probably even more badass than what I was thinking. Stupid time travel. Who am I?
I do appreciate at the end of the season where she learns that she shows them that like portal spell thing so they can transport. And I was like, that'll be convenient for season 2, so they don't have to travel everywhere.
It's
what is
fast
that
travel
spell
for
she
Skyrim
does
fans.
that she creates like a little fireball sun in her hands?
Yeah, that's sunlight. It's the sunlight spell. But yeah,
Because that's one of her big moments, right?
Yeah.
because like that's the thing, Pike. So I know we're gonna go next, but Pike was the sunlight person, right? Like Pike has that radiant energy, and when she loses all her powers, it's like Keyleth has to step up.
This is a complaint of mine. Is the second half of this season, if Pike is just with them, it's like very easy for them to get out of all of this because she deals with the undead. That's like her thing, and so much of this is I was like, if only freaking Pike was here.
Yeah.
Is that from the campaign though? It's like, well, we can't have her here, otherwise problem solved.
So the reason was Ashley Johnson at the time was filming Blind Spot in New York, which was a TV show. So
I didn't realize that. So she literally just wasn't there.
She literally wasn't there. She would so her coming in as like the astral version, that's what they called it whenever she would come in on Skype. Sometimes she could come in, and so they're like, "Oh, she's at this temple."
It's her astral. Wait, that's
I really
so
like that.
funny.
Yeah.
I love that. They're such nerds. God, at the core of all of this, they are just such nerds like us, and I appreciate things like that so much. So they were like, Matt was probably like, "Hey, we're about to have a big fight. You think you could Skype in?"
Yeah. So like that, and like you're right. Like she would have destroyed everything because radiant energy is double. It's like critical damage basically because it's against undead.
But it was cool that she wasn't there because they were, they had to solve more problems, and Keyleth had to have these big moments. And I really liked I don't know what they were called, but they were like Dementors almost, but more zombie-like.
Yeah.
And it literally looked like they were about to die, and then Keyleth last minute was like, I got us all. I was like, yes. That was one of those cheer moments. I was like, yes.
Yeah, I loved Pike's. What is that moment she has?
Okay, let's move on to Pike, I guess.
I mean, any other thoughts on?
No. I think I'm good with Keyleth. There's the romance with Vax.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that she like was like, this is not the time, and I like that it ends with like them distance.
You're so right. That was great when she was like, this is not the time. I really like that actually.
Yeah, and then we also from that we got what they fit so many of their like Easter eggs. I can't mention enough how many Easter eggs there are in these shows, and like even just lines, things like when Vax was like, "I'm just gonna walk away." That's because like Liam would do that all the time. He's just like, and I leave the conversation, and like they'd be mid conversation, be like, and I walk away, and like, and like there's another moment with like Gilmore's shop where he's like dagger, 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 dagger. And it's like, that's how he would do his attacks. Because he'd have like 3 attacks and he'd be like, dagger, dagger, dagger. And he'd just like throw the dagger 3 times. So it's like, there was a lot of like things like that I love that they were able to fit into the show. But yeah, the Keyleth stuff was great. I think it'll be interesting where they take her character going further. And like I said, I like that like she stood, she was like, this is not the time. We're in battle and I don't know how I feel about all this.
Yeah. It was realistic. It was good. I love in moments of fantasy when like the human emotion is like real still, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So we've talked a little bit about Pike. We're moving on to her
non-popcorn style.
Non-popcorn style. Just butter, non-popcorn.
We're sliding through.
Yeah. Okay, go on.
I don't think all the dots connected, or maybe I just need some of the context explained lore-wise of her big moment before she reconnects with whatever the spirit is, and it reveals herself. It reveals itself as as herself. What is happening there?
Okay, before Tommy gives us the Reader's Digest, I don't fully know what's going on there, but I love this sort of thing. And I'll be honest, I never understood the whole. I may mess it up again. Is it a cleric? She's a cleric?
Yeah.
She's a cleric.
I never understood the appeal of a cleric until watching this. Is I was like, oh, you could have some really good, almost like Matt Murdock dealing with religions and like your gods, but you could actually personify them in the D&D world and have literal conversations with them. I'll be honest, these scenes with Pike were the first time I was like, oh, I fully understand why people would want to play a cleric now.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I play cleric.
I know, and I'll be honest, I didn't get it. I'm sorry to tell you this live, but I didn't understand.
Doesn't
it
make my Peter tingle at all.
No.
I'm sorry I said it. Don't keep punishing me.
Yeah, I think what I liked about it, and I'm not like, not to get too into my own stuff, like I'm not personally that religious, but it's like what I like about it is in this world, they're deities and they actually existed. Like they were beings that do exist and they're real. And so I think it's really interesting. Like my deity is Gond, love a good Gond. But what is cool about this is like they call her deity Everlight, but in like it's Saren Ray is the actual goddess, but because this is D&D and because there's obviously like copyright stuff and things, they couldn't use some of the actual official names of things.
Oh, so I've never thought about that. Is that because they're coming out with a Dungeons and Dragons movie and they're probably like, don't use our intellectual property?
I think there's a mixture of that. I also think it's a little bit of like, so the D&D Wizard of the Coast, they actually have a really good relationship with like Critical Role, and like they've made their books. They've done like books based on their campaign.
They've had to have brought so much popularity to the sport, if you will.
Well, because Matt made this is an entire world that Matt made.
Can we call it a sport instead of a game?
Yeah, a sport. This is an entire world that Matt made. So it's like a lot of the stuff people are like, I want to play in this world now.
Yeah.
And so like that's where it comes from.
That's cool. That's so cool.
But so like that, there's another like the whispered one is also a nickname. The real name is Vecna. Like there's stuff like that. So
I gotcha. It's
but
a little respectful because it's on Amazon, and they don't. I get it. There's legal things to these. I
think it's the Amazon side of things.
I think it's the Amazon. That's what I was thinking. I was like, they probably D&D's like, okay. But Pike. So, Evan, I just took it kind of more as like a metaphor. It was more like, like your religion is a reflection of you, if that makes any sort of sense. Not to be like really cheesy of it, but that was kind of. It was like, what do you want out of this relationship with the Everlight?
Yeah, so I mean, Pike, obviously in the campaign, when she went to Blind Spot, we didn't see any of this. So it's cool. This is all like new stuff, but it is based on like a time
she
where
was just not there.
Yeah, her necklace cracking and stuff is a real thing that happened where she actually changed. I talked about alignments earlier and why I'm kind of bitter that Percy's alignment never changes. Like they changed Pike's alignment because there was basically Pike started to do things that were less holy. She would Scanlan at one time defecates on a bed, and then Pike also does it, and then also just straight up.
Wait, what?
Yeah,
what's the reason? Why?
I think it's Ashley Johnson coming through, less as Pike, but more Ashley Johnson.
Wait, no. Why is Scanlan pooping on the bed first, and then why is Pike saying I gotta do the same? Well, what is the context there?
I got to remember exactly. There is a spell. Well, no, Scanlan does have a spell called scrying, which he creates these magical poops and leaves them in spots, and he's able to like go back and see through them. It's his flavor. Like scrying can be anything, but he's like, yeah, I take a potion and then I poop something out.
Oh my god! Okay,
I might be getting wrong the Pike part of it, but I thought I heard that. But
that's fine.
The main part of Pike is like she also straight up they were interrogating someone and she just murdered them. She was like, so that like, so her like testing her religion and stuff is like a real thing, and so like they decided to expand on it here, and like you see her struggling of like, can I be in this group and still be believing my deity and stuff.
To me though, this was a classic High School Musical. It was basketball or the play. Do you want to Everlight or do you want to party with your friends? And I'll be honest, did we see which one she picked? I don't think we saw which one she ended up picking.
No, I think by being with the group, she chose the group. It's like
but it was only in astral form. Like I figured if she was choosing the group, she was going to show up in person. But
she's going to get there in time.
To me, I do think she Troy Bolton though, and she was like, "I can do both." And I think that was kind of what that was supposed to symbolize, but we never saw the decision.
And I think that's kind of what the Everlight was saying to her too, right? It's like you're the one that's causing your powers not to work because
you feel this
she's
moral
doubting.
conflict. Yeah, you feel this doubt.
Yeah.
Oh, and the Everlight was like, "Hey, yo, homie, just do both. Just love me still. What are you doing?"
That commercial with the girl was like, you can have hard shells and soft shells.
Yeah, exactly.
You can have
Porque no
both.
los dos.
Yeah.
Looking back at it, though, that is like a super important commentary on religion and faith, because there can, as we've all seen in the world, be terrible, terrible uber religious people, and likewise of atheists or whatever. But it's like
all sides. Yeah.
faith does not equate to good. It's just like what you do with that and how you represent it in your life.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate that insight as someone who grew up religious and all that. So
yeah, and you see Pike, like she's great, and like her, I think I love the beginning of like spell slots. What's big with her, like, so spell slots is big in D&D where you have a limited amount of spells, and like that whole like we talked about the first 2 episodes with like the dragon stuff. It's like there's that moment where the kid is dying. Who, fun fact, the kids were voiced by Liam and Sam's kids in real life.
Oh,
That's
I
nice.
love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, but she was like, I can't do anymore. I already healed Grog. Like I'm tapped, and that's like their representation as like her spell slots were out, which I just love.
I think
that
that's
they did
important for power scaling. She
so
can't just
there-
be healing everyone.
You're telling me there's a limited number of slots for spells, and Scanlan chose to fill one of those with magic duties?
that. Listen, scrying is so important.
Sounds like my kind of guy.
It's basically like you're putting hidden cameras in people's houses.
Dead. Okay, that's great. Okay, not to set up what character we're gonna go to next, but I do love her relationship with Grog because they, for all intents and purposes, are like bitter opposites, but they're just like homies till the end. And I love relationships like that.
Yeah.
Love when she rides on his back, and it's just something about like the whole opposites attract. You know what I mean? Like they literally, what sort of shared life experience do they have? But they're just the best of friends.
Yeah, they're best buddies, and yeah, it all comes from like, this is like a pre-stream stuff. It was basically like Ashley was coming in late, and so they're like, we'll just make you Grog's best friend because Grog's not going to be here, and you'll go searching for Grog in the episode. And the backstory is like her dad or one of her relatives was being like attacked by like Grog's group. Grog's because Grog is a Goliath, and so they were being attacked by Grog's group, and they were like, kill him, and Grog was like, no. And so Grog stood up, and they just massacred Grog, and just basically like he was almost dead. And then Pike came and healed him, and they thanked him, and so that's how they became best buddies.
Oh wait, that's so cool. I love that.
Awesome.
Oh, see, and this is what's great about all this is there is that bigger lore that if you are interested, if you're someone you were just like, oh my God, I love this show, there is something now you can go back to and like get all of this. So I do really enjoy that about this. It's, it was like Star Wars when they were like, oh, did you know there's like 30 some books? And we're like, what? No, I had no idea.
Yeah.
Not canon anymore, unfortunately.
Oh,
Or
get
are
out
they?
of here
I don't
with
know.
that.
I forget what it is.
I know, they're probably not after Disney bought it, but okay. Pike is great, and like Evan said, it's a great look on religion. It's nice for the Critical Role fans because this was just time Ashley was away, and they didn't get to see that part of the story. So Pike is a great one. I'm just now seeing here her last name is Trickfoot. That's pretty cool too. I like that. Okay,
Sounds like a skateboarding trick.
yeah, it does. Okay. Any last thoughts on Pike before we move on to the obvious next one? I'm gonna bring it up every time now.
Yeah.
I think like kudos to her for putting up with Scanlan and his.
Hey, sounds like she is a partner in crime now.
Yeah. Pike's great.
All right, our good buddy, big old Grog. Grog's last name is Strongjaw. I'm liking all their last names actually.
Yeah.
I came in really wanting to enjoy Grog because in the one D&D campaign I played, I was I think like half orc, half barbarian, carried a giant dual hand battle axe.
He was trying to do the most damage possible.
Yes, rush into scenarios, take all the hits, whatever the blood rage fucking spell was that class has.
I love that, and Grog says it. He goes, "I'm gonna rage," and he does. I love it.
He does.
Well, he would always. It's like an ask. He would say, "I would like to rage." He would do, and like Travis would always word it that way.
Now what they do, I love it when they're playing now, someone will be like, I'd like to rage, and they're like rage. Like they all like yeah, they're like, yeah. Like it's so great. I love it. They get excited.
Yeah. I mean, he has some cool moments, but ultimately I felt a little disappointed. He didn't get as much screen time as I would have liked.
There's so many characters, we're going through them all. And like when you got to focus on Percy, you're trying to do the Vax Keyless stuff. I think Grog is someone that went into the shadows. I loved how they focused on his emotional side with Pike. Like you see him crying on the wagon, that kind of stuff. But I agree with you. I think he worked better in the podcast. Hopefully we'll see more of him. But like he was one where it's like, he's still my favorite because I love like, he's just a big old dumb. Cause he has I think it's a 4 intelligence. Like he is not smart. Like his stats are very bad.
Yeah. Because you put them all into whatever the physical attributes are for that class.
I think they said like
smarts. I'm gonna just rage. I'm gonna run in there.
There's like animals that are. I think Trinket's smarter than him. Like it's like.
So just a weird side story. When Brendan first joined our D&D campaign, he played a Grog-like character, and the thing says you can rage 3 times a day. And Brendan read it as he has to rage 3 times a day. And so he was raging in like the most inopportune moments. We were like, dude, stop.
He's like, there's a butterfly. I gotta rage.
Yeah, no, it literally, we're like, okay, we walk into a new town. He's like, all right, I'm gonna rage. We're like, what? Why? It was great. Fun times. But this is what I'm saying is there's so much fun to be had in D&D. Even just like, it's not something you need. If you have a really good DM like Tommy is, it's not something you need to like scour through hours of books and learn what you need to do. You can, have a character, know about them, and still have a really good time with minimal knowledge about the whole of D&D.
And that was Travis. Like Travis is, if you see a picture of him, he is a bro. Like he is a bro that like got into this, loves it, but was definitely like nervous about doing it. So like that's how he kind of went with Goliath Barbarian. Is like, I don't have to worry about spells as much. I can kind of just do my thing. And like playing a dumber character, he was nervous about like the improvising side. Like he was nervous about like doing it wrong. So it was easy for him
so
to be
funny. He was nervous about it because now I think he's one of my favorites.
And he's played some. Yeah, I mean, you love
I love
his
Travis.
new character.
Yeah, I love Travis. That's so funny to hear that he was nervous about it.
Yeah.
There's a moment in the back half of the season where I think it's with Keyless like sun spell thing or whatever, but he's has to get in close to stop it or whatever, and his skin's flying off and shit. He's like, I can do it. And I was like, this is awesome, but also X-Men: The Last Stand. Wolverine and Jean Grey.
Yeah. He also jumped into a vat of acid while being healed. I was like, wow, this dude will do whatever. He's like, I'll do it. He literally jumped in and I was jaw on the floor. I was like, whoa.
That's why you play those characters. It's like, whatever.
Those moments.
Consequences be damned. I'm going in. I'm probably gonna die.
And that is Grog. He will go ahead first. I love him and Vax. They almost feel like a Legolas and the dwarf from Lord of the Rings, where they're like, that counts as one when they're doing the giants.
Yeah, that's great.
Grog is one of my complaints about the show or the character at some point is that sometimes I feel like Grog specifically, his voice almost slips into like an English accent out of nowhere in the Silver Tongue episode when his normal voice is like, hey, I'm Grog, and he's like, hey, I'm Grog. When he gets possessed by Silver Tongue, it's like there was Percival. Sometimes I noticed like, I don't come from the podcast at all, so this is just me observing. It's like he kind of sounds like a different character at some points. Him and Grog.
The Silver Tongue was specifically like the professor. It was a mix of both their voices.
Talking through.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because he was possessed.
I'll let that one slide then. All right. Yeah.
The Silver Tongue was a really cool spell. That's one thing they do throughout the whole thing is the way they really bring the spells to life on the screen. Really, like I'm getting ready to play a campaign with my cousin Brett, and it like had me totally reimagine my character. I was like, oh my God, this has given me so much better ideas for what I actually want to do. It was a really good just visual representation of, a game that's played mostly in people's minds.
Yeah,
Mhm.
but I never need to see Anders licking his teeth again. Like, man.
Yeah, no, I didn't enjoy that with the silver
Oh,
tongue.
it was the worst. But I love that whole battle. That's a really amazing scene.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Any last thoughts on Grog? I don't think we have a natural progression here, so I'm excited to see who picks
Oh,
what.
we better popcorn.
We jump off the tallest character to the shortest.
Yeah, no, let's do that. It would be your turn to pick anyways, Evan. So let's go with Scanlan.
Scanlan.
Yeah, the man.
I have
the
mixed
most
emotions.
divisive man.
Yeah,
You either
'cause-
love him or hate him.
Well, here's the thing, and maybe I'm throwing a lot of my biases just at this character, but when I fired up episode 1, Scanlan, like they cut to him, he's naked, dick out with whatever elf, and I was like, is this what this show is? Like, I am tired of shows trying to do like Rick and Morty. I'm tired of Rick and Morty trying to do Rick and Morty, like just
No, this is a
like,
good take.
yeah, but
I
it's
agree with this.
everyone trying to do adult animated series. I was like, I don't know if I'm here for it. It's almost a disservice, those first 2 episodes, because the exploration of D&D and this fantasy world is like, that's amazing. That's what I don't know. I think that's what draws people to it.
I think when you're doing adult animation and you don't have the rating, it's tempting to do that for the hook because Rick and Morty did define a new generation of adult animation and bring a lot of fans to it. So I get the appeal, I get the want, and I do think from not knowing the podcast as well, I think part of that is Scanlan's character.
Okay.
And so I think I think the fact that it's true to form is what lets me let it slide. I could be wrong. I'm hoping I'm right here. Tommy, is this what Scanlan's like in the podcast?
Yeah, and I said earlier, I think it works better in the podcast because it's like 4 hours and you may get 1 or 2 Scanlan jokes. Like, it's a lot. Sam is a really amazing player.
I love Sam. Scanlan's my favorite character of the group. And so I didn't know if Evan was going to want to fight me after I said this, but I love Scanlan. Maybe it's because I love bards, but...
Weren't you a bard in one of your campaigns?
Yeah. That's what I play currently. Yeah. I love the bard.
You got to disclose the biases here.
Yeah. So the one I'm playing right now, I am a bard. And so while I'm not as like horny and raunchy as Scanlan, we share a lot of the same like gravitas and verbose, and like I think he views himself as the leader of the group, and I love that because he's clearly not.
Yeah.
Well, and Scanlan has a really cool arc, and like all Sam's characters, he like presents them one way, and there's always more to his stuff. And I think Scanlan is one of those characters where there's stuff there, and they show like little bits of like, his plans constantly being put down, him being the damsel, like all the time. Like it's like he's the one that gets captured, and Vex putting down his ideas, and we have this Gambo episode where he finally gets to do something, and he does it really well. That's straight from the campaign, and it's scary because he does go off on his own, and obviously in the campaign they're not writing it; they're rolling dice, so it could have went really wrong, and he just destroyed an entire house on his own. It's wild. Like it's basically what happened, where he like turns into a triceratops, he like does all that stuff. So this is another one. Scanlan's hand is actually Big B's hand, but again, that's a D&D thing, so it's an actual like legit spell. So it's like they just
thought
call
it was a mage hand, and I was gonna ask you. I was like, can a mage hand do all the stuff that his is doing?
Yeah, it's a specific thing called Big B. So he's like falling off, and he's like, "Come on, Big B, catch me!" And I think that's the other thing that like Sam and Travis both, their own physicality is so much a part of the podcast that you miss that when it's like this animated version, that like it almost, because it's like when Scanlan's saying all this creepy stuff, it's weird when you're seeing this creepy like gnome saying it. Scanlan's great, and like he's got his moments. There's stuff coming up. I'm excited for you guys to see. I hope they go there because he's got some cool things.
Yeah, I'm excited. I didn't even know that.
I did really like when I forget who the general is, but he's like fighting on the rooftop with the big fucking hand, fencing with the middle finger.
It's great.
And his songs are great. And like in the campaign, he always, so anytime he inspired, anytime he did anything, he would do parodies of actual songs. And like, it's so good.
So I really loved his whole misadventure, like you said, Tommy, where he went off on his own and he ended up being very successful. And it just, he fell very ass backwards into that. And I love just a typical bard probably would fall ass backwards into great success, but then for years to come be like, oh, I took them down. You should have seen me. I was dodging and weaving. And it was like, so that's just the bard, is they're a storyteller. And so they're going to tell that story for years, and it's going to be much different than the actual recounting of it.
Any other thoughts on Scanlan and
Love
any
his
favorite
hand.
moments? Love the hand.
The hand was great. My favorite moment was definitely when they are in like the first like real intense fight, and he's inside like dancing and singing, and he's got cake all over him, and he's humping it on the audience. I was like, that's so funny. He comes out and he's like, they love me in there, and they're getting arrested, and he's like, oh.
I think if you want to know Scanlan, like a good scene that I feel like represents him is when, again, we always talk about like the bad episodes, but it's like the first two of like where the kid just died, right? And they're like, and he starts tuning his lute, and everyone's like, come on, Scanlan, like you don't have, like, before that all we saw was him being the funny guy, and that's the moment where he's like, we're gonna kill a dragon, and you see him get serious. And I think that's the thing about Scanlan is like he has that side of him, and he does take things seriously when he needs to. And I think that's a scene of like you can see him like things matter to him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's the group.
That's the group.
Let's talk villains then, kind of as a whole.
The Briarwoods.
Oh.
So, Sir Briarwood, he's a vampire?
Silas.
Silas. So,
Okay.
is he an undead? Yeah, Tommy, what is Silas?
Yeah, so we can talk about Silas, and I think this is also a good part to talk about like Matt in general, and just like you can actually see Matt multiple times throughout the season as they have a random guard, and it's Matt. Like they just made him, and it's always something bad happens. Like he's the guy that Scanlan pees on. He's the guy that gets beat up by the group. Like
I love that.
But Silas is so good, and I'm glad they had Matt voice him because he does a good job with it. He is a vampire, so like we see in that scene of like them basically praying to Vecna, and like Vecna makes him a vampire to keep him alive. And I love that they gave him a backstory. Like both like you kind of I was kind of rooting for him for love. They're
sympathetic villains. It's great.
I broke the world for you. Oh, it's so good.
That is great. And there's just something always classic about the lover who like does whatever they can to keep their other significant other from dying. And she made the hard choice. She was like, all right, we're going to have this life of evil immortality, I guess. And it's always great. And so, small detail, Silas's blade, I screamed when it started eating people's blood, or I don't even know, absorbing it and getting bigger. I was like, what a cool weapon. Like I said, that first fight between the Briarwoods and when they all bust out, that from that moment on, I was hooked. I was like, that was such a great fight scene.
Craven's Edge. And someone grabbed it at the end, so we'll see what happens.
It? I missed it. Tell me.
Grog.
Or do we not know? Grog has it?
Grog.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Because the blade was just as cool as Silas was. It's a 50-50 character to me.
Yeah, Craven's Edge is great. There's a lot there. And yeah, the Briarwoods are just a fun group. I also like one of the things I want to note about them is like we think about like Percy, right? And like this is like so big in his life. This is an impacting moment that matters so much. The thing that I don't know if the show has shown it too much is like the Briarwoods don't care about Del Rolos. It's not even like they have a personal vendetta and that's why they killed him. They needed the land. They needed the ziggurat. So it's like all that torturing, all that like killing their whole family was just for just them. It's like the saying I think about is like, for you that was the biggest moment of your life. For me, it was just a Tuesday. Like that's how I feel about the Briarwoods.
What's that Mad Men quote? It's like always in memes where he goes, I don't think about you at all.
Yeah, he's like, I don't even think about you.
Yeah.
I personally actually really like the Thanos one where Wanda's like, you took everything from me. And he goes, I don't even know who you are.
So good.
Or, there's a classic, actually a better one in Civil War where Scott goes, they're in jail and Scott Pym he goes, Hank Pym always said, never trust a Stark. He's like, who are you?
So good.
That one's actually probably the best. He goes,
but the same way I felt about Percy, like not expecting to have to like keep up with who these people are. So after watching the first 2 episodes, I was like, okay, so it's 2 episode arcs. They introduced this vampire guy. let's wrap this up in a tidy 2 episodes. And I was like,
No.
oh man, they're sticking around this whole season. Oh, they're the they're the villain.
This was good. Yeah, the pacing was a bit odd in that way, but it was the
Yeah.
better of the 2 stories, so I'm glad they stuck
sure.
with it.
And it is like one of those moments where it's like when they show up at the end of episode 2, I love that introduction, and they're so evil. Like the whole feast where we're kind of talking about Delilah too, but Delilah, like with their wine over her face, and she's like, yeah, the poor Del Rolos, they just they gave it to us, and she knows that Percy's right there, and she's just doing it just to spite him, and it's they are fun villains to root against.
Just because I need to know, what is her spell she's doing where the shadows are like stabbing people?
I do.
Oh, not
I don't
to
know
quiz
it
you
off
too hard. It's so cool. This is what I'm saying is their opening fight, he whips out this amazing blood-sucking blade, and she's got like shadows stabbing people left and right. I literally was like, holy shit, these guys are cool.
I believe it's Finger of Death. Sorry, not to interrupt.
Ooh, that's a cool name. It sounds like something Scanlan would have.
Tingle of Death?
Scanlan Tingle.
Yeah. Okay. They are great villains. I'm glad they
Yeah.
were like the main season villains because, like you said, it just. I think I've said this like 9 times. It just feels so true to D&D. They have a connection to a character. They're part of the main story, but at the end of the day, it's the I don't even think about you. You know what I mean? Like Percy's like dedicating his whole life to killing them, and they're just like, I don't know, you're an insignificant immortal or mortal.
Yeah. Shout out Grey Griffin. We mentioned her earlier. Recognized it right away. I was like, that has to be Azula.
Yeah.
And she is so good at the villainess as Delilah Briarwood.
Yeah,
Fantastic
she's
villain.
incredible, and like she has like talked a little bit, and like she loves Delilah. Like it definitely was a fun character for her to play, and I think it's easy to be like, oh, she's just going to do the Azula voice, but I think like Bridge, you said it of like it is different. Like there are like
it's nuanced. Yeah,
it is different. You can catch it. You definitely notice it, and there are a couple of times where I was like, okay, that was Azula, but no, for the most part, it is different and it's nuanced, and I love to hear that she like was into the character and took it on. And the whole feel of this, even you telling me their kids were in it, like this just has like a family startup feel to it as far as TV shows come. And there's just something heartwarming about that. You know what I mean? It's your local mom and pop shop of TV shows. Like we got to support it. That's why it's great.
And that's like what they could do because they had the money. Networks couldn't really tell them what to do because it's like, hey, we're funding this ourselves. And so they were able to keep that kind of like family vibe that they've always had.
Yeah. It feels very true to them. It doesn't feel like there was much studio interference, if any.
So the final showdown between Vox Machina and the Briarwoods in the Ziggurat, is that what it's called?
Yeah, Ziggurat, yeah.
Yeah, trust yourself, Evan. You got this.
Don't say it's Scanlan's way.
Yeah.
I just love watching all the battle scenes and I like the fighting. Like Alex had said, it's like watching a D&D anime, which it is, so you are. But just seeing these things realized on the screen is so cool on a major streamer. There were times where I felt like, and maybe it's a facet of it, having to follow the campaign, but I felt it may have dragged on like a beat or two too long.
It's realistic. These fights are long, baby. They take forever, and they take a lot of moves to take down the big bad. It's not a 1, 2, 3, 4. Sure. We done. We did it.
My one gripe with the finale, the final showdown, is they beat the Briarwoods. Percy is about to kill one of them, and Vex stands in front of whoever it is he's about to shoot. Maybe it's Lady Briarwood. I was like, wow, that's a very emotional, powerful moment. And then like 10 minutes later, maybe it's even the next episode, I don't remember, but he's about to shoot someone again. He's fighting the demon, and the whole team stands in front of whoever he's about to shoot. I was like, come on. Like, you just robbed that first moment, which was a lot more powerful, of its power. Like, so, it dragged for me a little bit, but I did.
I hear that. I saw that more as like, it's not just Vex that cares about, like, it's like the whole team cares about Percy. But I get what you're saying. It's like you're doing this take 2. Like, it's
come on now, all together this time. The thing I love, just like I said, the fight scenes in this show are top notch. I mean, they are on par with some of the best animes I've ever seen in fight scenes. So like, just kudos to them. The animation in these fight scenes are so well done, and it's still reminiscent of a real D&D fight. They work together, they do things, they support each other, they heal each other. It's cooperative, and it's not just everyone running in, taking a swing, getting beaten, and then the next one charges in. They do things together, they plan. And I love that they always seem to either don't have a plan and they'll be like, oh, we don't have a plan, or they'll be like, okay, let's plan, and they plan. It's good. It's really well done, and I just love the visual of the demon in Percy and the plague mask on his face and the shadows of it all, because I didn't catch that the mask wasn't like a real thing, if that makes sense. Like, I thought he was putting on that mask when he was killing people.
He was.
So I thought it was like a physical mask he was putting on and off, not like shadows forming on his
He
face.
excuses himself for a moment every time.
Yeah.
I'll be right back, guys.
No, that was a real mask until at the end it becomes shadows.
Okay.
But it was like a physical mask, because you see it on his like room. You see it like hanging there. Like
Okay. Yeah, but it was a great visual. It was so cool seeing it intertwined with the shadows and the demon.
Let me ask you guys this: the finale, his finale with the demon, he shoots his own hand, and it leaves through the hole in it. Like, that exercises the demon. Was it in his hand, or like what's happening there?
It's the bullet, I think.
It's the Okay.
It forfeits a soul. Remember, he's like, you idiot, you just forfeited your soul. Now when you get shot with it, the soul goes to that demon. So it's almost like, I don't know, Tommy, explain it to me.
Yeah, so I first wanted to say, the battle's epic, and like, I think kudos to like the animation crew, Titmouse. Like, they're a big part of this, and like, one of the fun facts is like, the main guy, the art director, is a critter, which is the name of like the fans' critical role. So it's like they're critters, and he was doing things that like they wouldn't even think about. And he's like, oh yeah, you guys did this in episode blank blank, where I'm gonna like put this in the background, stuff like that. So the demon smoke monster is called Orthax, and I think how I interpreted it was the demon was still there because obviously it was in the gun, but it temporarily like restrained Orthax. Like, it's like it like basically was such a surprising move that like I think Orthax had to heal almost. It was almost an attack on Orthax. So I think it's like that's how I took it.
Yeah, it was dope visually, though. I didn't even question it. Now I'm questioning it now a little, but like in the moment, I was just like, "Yeah, do it."
When he did it, I was like, wouldn't it have made more sense for him to shoot his shooting hand? Like,
Yeah.
really incapacitate this trigger happy demon.
It was great. He is a trigger happy demon.
He's so good.
It was a great visual. Like I said, with most like demons, you're gonna think of like magic and spells, but like this demon's like, no, I'm gonna shoot you in the fucking head.
My favorite shot was the one where it's two. I love when Percy does take off the mask and he's just trembling and crying in his eyes.
Yeah, that was great.
And then I love when it's like the dream world, whatever, and it's like Percy standing there, and for scale, you see this giant beaked monster looking down on him. Like, it's so good.
There are a lot of really good visuals. I wouldn't be able to point to them like you just did, but there was many moments where I was like, oh, this is like a great shot right here. You know what I mean? Multiple times for episodes, I was like, I just love this visually. And I think it's a testament to the animators. Like, they were good with still shots and they were good with the motion of it all. Like, nothing was lost on me. It was really well animated.
Yeah, and we'll never know if the Briarwood succeeded or not either. That's the thing. Like, was it too early? Like, you'll never know.
Yeah, I love it. That's great though, because it's just Matt leaving it open. He's like, maybe we'll be back. Maybe
and he still goes like, we talk about it like campaign 3. It's still set in the same world. So there's so many ties, so many things. He brings up characters. He recently he brought up a character that is from campaign 1, and like it's cool when they know, they like pick it up. They're like, wait, what? And they're like, it's
what name
so
did you
good.
say? They're like, I think I heard that before.
Sounds familiar. I don't remember.
From like 7 years ago. And
I was gonna say it's a
remember
long time ago now for them.
Yeah.
They've been doing this for a while. It's cool, really cool. Ending scene is great. There's a ton of characters we really weren't able to cover because there's a lot of characters in this show, and that's part of what makes it great, is that it feels like a very full world with real things going on in it. I think the thing I would compare it to that we've talked about recently is Arcane on Netflix. And after some soul searching, I think I liked this more than Arcane. Not by like a lot, not like where I'm like Arcane was trash compared to this, because I really liked Arcane. But I think just the tie-in element of like the grassroots of it all really puts this over the edge to me.
That's a fair statement. Tommy, I'll let you go last, but I would say if I had to put it up next to Arcane, I'd probably choose Arcane. This was, for someone who's dabbled a little bit in D&D, it's just cool to see, and this is probably what people love about Arcane as well. It's just cool to see these things that have been niche in a way, nerd culture, come to the forefront, be fully realized. This is the shit you're envisioning when you're swashbuckling on your couch with your brother when you're 7 years old. Is like after you first watched Lord of the Rings or some shit. It's like that's the feeling you're chasing, and I think they capture it at some points of this. I didn't love some of the adult animation stuff, but if you love fantasy, I would almost compare it to the Witcher Nightmare of the Wolf animated movie. It's akin to that, where it's just great action. Love seeing stuff that wouldn't be very achievable with like practical effects or CGI effects in a live action movie, unless you had bazillions of dollars. But it's if you're interested in D&D or fantasy stuff, this is a good watch, I'll say. I have my gripes. It would be irresponsible of me not to, but overall, it's a good watch.
0 gripes from me. Tommy, go on.
Yeah, I mean, obviously I'm biased. I think I think the people that come in from Critical Role are always going to love it because it's like, it's your thing, it's your baby, and you're seeing it come to life. And I think I love Arcane. I think that's really well. And I think for the people who are League of Legends fans, they probably feel very similar to that, where it's like, oh, it's my thing. Like it's here. I think they do such a good job of creating the world. And I was worried. I definitely came in very tepid of like, it's a lot, and also, like I said, they're not giving you the origin. They're throwing you right into something that's like a couple arcs in. And I feel like they did a good job of establishing the characters, establishing the lore as much as they can. There's probably things that are confusing and probably, spaces where you're like, okay, I'm not going to think too much about it. But for the most part, as someone who knows a lot of the lore, I'm like, they covered a lot, and I thought they did it pretty organically.
That's great. I think those might have been some good closing thoughts, but do we have any sort of really big final thoughts? I think for me, we really just hit on some really good ones there. But for me, I think what's great about this is the dynamic storytelling, the roots of it all. Even though I was not there from day one, I can still marvel in their success. I think that's really cool. I love the startup feel of it, if you will, which they're not anymore. They've made it. They're mainstream. They got a TV show on Amazon. That's huge. And so I love that. It's exciting, and it's just visually, and it's a great way to bring a medium that's all imagination. Essentially, it was a really good rendition of what these true D&D fans, I think, really want to see out of a show. So Dungeons and Dragon movie better step up to the plate.
I'm nervous for that. I think it's we'll see, but yeah, I think you said it, and I think the last thing I would want to talk about is just the end with the hint to season 2 of what could be coming, and also I would like to hear your thoughts of what things would you want to see them explore more, and maybe I'll keep quiet and won't give any things, but yeah, I love. You see the dragon coming, and it's one, and then it's 4 of them.
Yeah, it's great.
And they set it up with and you got the David Tennant's character. They're coming to avenge.
So for me, that was a good cliffhanger. I'm sure it has significance for a lot of people, but I was just like, oh damn, 4 dragons are coming now. You know what I mean? It was hard to beat 1 dragon, so that was cool. Yeah. For me, I want to see in season 2. I really would like to. Wow, I don't know. I need a backstory like Percy's from someone, and I kind of want to be surprised, if that makes sense. Because I really liked that. I was surprised that this is Percy's backstory. Oh, he's the main character. I kind of wanted to come up like that, if that makes sense, because that feels true to D&D nature.
Yeah, having 0 background, the cliffhanger, I was like, okay, so there's more dragons now?
Yeah, that was me.
All right, I guess I should care. But from a season 2, I think Alex nailed it on the head. I can really appreciate the crowd sourced, crowdfunded, community feel. And even though it wasn't my favorite show of all time, I will be rooting for it. If there's a season 2, I'll check it out. Definitely. From a season 2, I'd want to see. I hope they can maybe set aside some of the lean less into the adult animation raunchy jokes. That none of that stuff landed for me. I think I really loved the lore and the world building.
I need more lore. Yeah,
Yeah.
I know this is a huge world. And I need more of it. The nerd in me's like, "Da, da, 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 I'm gonna eat it all up."
And I think they know that people didn't love the raunchiness. I'm hoping that they picked up on that. I'm hoping that like they do pull it back a little bit and focus on this next arc. It's called the Chroma Conclave. That's all I'll say. And it is people like we talk about the Briarwood being like the first arc. People are like, ooh, Chroma Conclave is everyone's favorite arc. This is a big one.
Not me wanting to look it up and spoil myself.
Don't do it.
No, I'm not going to. I really want to, but I'm not going to.
It's people's favorite arc because there's a lot that goes on. Yeah,
That's a good way to do a cliffhanger.
That's got me intrigued for sure. Tommy, thank you so much for coming on the pod and sharing your actual expertise on the topic.
Yeah, you backed up. I set you up perfectly. You didn't let us down in the beginning.
You did not let us down.
This was
at
a good
all.
time. I had a lot of laughs along the way. This was good. I really think if you are somehow this far into this and you haven't watched the show, you really should go check it out at this point. If you've liked what we've been talking about, this is a good show for you.
Mm-hmm. Tommy, before we let you go, anything you want to plug?
Yeah, I have things, I have a podcast called Star Wars. You guys
You
are familiar.
you know there's something he wants to plug. What a weird question. Go on, Tommy. Sorry.
No, today
Tell
I
the
don't want
listeners where they can find you. Sorry. It's a much less awkward tee up.
Yeah, I mean, on Twitter, I am Tommy's Tidbits. If you ever want to talk to me, you can find me there. I'm also over on the PSR Discord, post-show recaps. If you ever want to join them, they're a great community, another podcast that I'm very close to. And so like that's where I do the D&D, so you can always join our D&D campaign. And then otherwise, I have a podcast with a good friend, Michael O'Rear, called Star Wars. We will be covering Moon Knight soon, so that's going to be coming up. And in the meantime, on this podcast, I've been on Shit 90 shows recently. Like in the last week, I did Shit 90 shows where I covered Boy Meets World. It's that spicy Topanga Corey breakup time. It's real intense.
Which one? Go on.
Yeah, I know. The cabin stuff. Britt.
Oh, okay. No, I actually know which one you're talking about then. Okay.
Yeah. And then so I covered that. And then I went on One Indescribable Podcast, which is a crazy ex-girlfriend podcast, covering an episode there with some wedding talk. So, I got into my wedding side and lots of good times. And then, check those out.
You're just a busy podcast being.
Yeah.
Just a buzz.
Buzz. Good stuff. Thanks for coming. We loved having you here, Tommy. Always a pleasure.
Yeah.
Thank you guys.
I think that'll do it for this episode of Two Dudes Watch Cartoons. If you want more Two Dudes, make sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Follow us at Two Dudes Watch Cartoons on Instagram and at Two Dudes Watch on Twitter. We put out new episodes every 2 weeks, and we love to hear from you guys. We'll catch you next time.
Two dudes watch cartoons.